Part 1, The Inheritance. The rain hadn't stopped since the funeral. Emily stared through the window, watching the droplets race down the glass like tiny silver ghosts. Outside, the garden looked gray and lifeless, much like the house itself without Grandma Margaret. The funeral had been quiet, intimate. Just close family, a few neighbors, and the lingering presence of something unspoken. Something that clung to the air like wet smoke. Emily clutched the small velvet box in her lap. It had been given to her by her mother earlier that morning, her expression unreadable. "It was your grandmother's last request," her mother had said, eyes distant. "But I want to be very clear. Do not wear it. Just keep it safe, please." Emily hadn't asked questions. Not then. But now, alone in her room, she opened the box. Inside lay a silver ring, old and strangely dark, almost blackened as if tarnished by more than time. It had an ornate pattern, twisting vines etched along the band, and a small red stone embedded in its center. The gemstone pulsed faintly, almost alive, and cold air seemed to waft from it. She picked it up, feeling a chill shoot through her fingers. There was something mesmerizing about it, like it had been waiting. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. That night, Emily awoke to the sound of whispering. She sat up in bed, heart hammering, straining to hear. The whispers were faint, like the murmur of people in the next room, only she was alone. Her parents' bedroom was downstairs. This part of the house, Grandma Margaret's wing, had been closed for years until her recent illness forced them to move her into the old upstairs room Emily now occupied. The whispers came again, closer this time. She turned her head toward the antique mirror that stood in the corner. It had once belonged to her grandmother, and even now it was covered in a white cloth. But tonight the cloth was gone, and in the glass, standing behind her, was a woman. Emily screamed and flipped around. No one. The room was empty. She turned back toward the mirror. Nothing there now, just her pale, wide-eyed reflection. The next morning, Emily didn't tell her mother what she'd seen. Her mom was already on edge, speaking less and less since the funeral. Instead, Emily focused on the ring. It wouldn't come off. No matter how hard she tugged, twisted, or soaked her hand, it remained snug, almost as if her skin had grown around it. The cold sensation hadn't faded either. If anything, it had spread, crawling up her wrist and resting like a weight on her chest. She searched online. Ring stuck on finger. How to remove tight ring. Silver ring won't come off. Nothing helped. When she finally gave up and looked into the mirror again, the ring shimmered with a dull red light. And behind her, just for a second, she saw her grandmother's eyes, watching. Over the next few days, the occurrences escalated. The lights in her room flickered constantly, but only when she was alone. Books fell from shelves. Her grandmother's old rocking chair creaked back and forth, even when the air was still. Worst of all were the dreams. Every night, Emily dreamt of her grandmother standing in the garden, surrounded by dead roses. Her face was obscured by a black veil, and she would whisper something Emily couldn't understand. Each night she got closer, her words more urgent, more frantic. One night Emily woke up screaming as she felt a cold hand brush her cheek. Her mother burst into the room. "What's going on in here?" Emily hesitated. I think something's wrong with the ring." Her mother paled. "You wore it?" "I didn't mean to keep it on. I can't get it off." Her mother sank onto the edge of the bed and took Emily's hand. She tried to pull the ring off herself, but winced as the metal burned her fingertips. She looked at Emily, horror creeping into her expression. "We need to talk." Downstairs in the kitchen, her mother made tea with shaking hands. "That ring," she began, "has been in our family for generations. Your grandmother, she wasn't always the sweet old woman you remember." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" "She practiced things, old things, rituals. She believed the ring was a protective charm, but it always scared me. She said it bound her to something, said it kept her safe as long as she never took it off." "She never did." Her mother nodded. "Not once. Not even in the hospital she begged us not to remove it. When she died, I should have destroyed it. But she said it was yours now, that only you could wear it. That's why I gave it to you, but I didn't think you'd actually—" Emily stared at her hand. The ring shimmered faintly under the kitchen light. "What happens if I keep wearing it?" Her mother looked away. "I don't know. But whatever your grandmother bound to that ring, it's awake now." That night, Emily tried sleeping without the ring. She wrapped her hand in a towel and duct taped it, hoping it would block out the chill. But it didn't help. She woke again at 3 a.m. This time, her door was wide open. The hallway light flickered, and at the end of the hallway stood her grandmother. Half her face was shadowed, the other pale and sunken. Her mouth didn't move, but Emily heard her voice inside her skull. "Come with me." Emily shook her head. "You're dead." Her grandmother's form tilted unnaturally, her neck bending at a sickening angle. "Come with me." Emily slammed the door. When she turned around, the mirror had fogged up completely, except for one word scrawled across the glass: bending. In the morning, she demanded answers. Her mother, now visibly exhausted, refused to speak more about the ring. But Emily wasn't willing to sit in silence. She remembered that Grandma Margaret had kept a private collection of books in the attic, books her mother had forbidden her from touching as a child. She climbed up after breakfast, brushing aside dust and cobwebs. The attic was freezing. In a large trunk, she found them, thick leather-bound volumes filled with symbols, runes, and handwritten annotations. One stood out, The Vessel and the Veil. Inside, she read about objects used to bind spirits, how the spirit of the dead, if tied properly to a vessel, could be prevented from passing on, trapped in this world forever. But such bindings were risky. If the object was worn or used incorrectly, the spirit could try to possess the wearer, using them as a new host. She flipped pages feverishly until one passage caught her breath. If the vessel was created by a blood relative, the bond becomes generational. The spirit will always seek the next heir, especially in the absence of willing sacrifice. Emily dropped the book. She was the next heir. That night, the dreams became unbearable. This time, Emily wasn't just watching her grandmother, she was her. In the dream, she stood in a circle of salt, holding the ring over a dying bird. She chanted words in a language she didn't recognize. A black smoke rose from the bird's body and curled into the ring, shrieking as it was trapped. She felt her heart racing, her own and her grandmother's at once. She awoke gasping for breath, her hands shaking. Blood dripped from her nose, and the ring pulsed with heat. The final straw came 2 days later. Emily came home from school and found the house cold and dark. Her mother's car was still in the driveway, but the lights were out. The silence was suffocating. "Mom?" She called. No answer. She wandered through the halls until she found her mother sitting in the living room, staring at the wall. "Mom?" Her mother turned slowly. Her eyes were completely black. "You should never have worn it," she said in a voice that was not hers. Emily backed away. The lights burst overhead, the walls groaned, and from every shadow her grandmother's voice echoed. "Bind her! Complete the circle!" Emily screamed and ran. She didn't stop until she was in her room, door locked, ringed by salt. Now she sits by candlelight, surrounded by the old books, trying to find a way to undo what's been done. The ring won't come off. Her grandmother's spirit grows stronger every night, and Emily feels herself slipping, losing time, hearing thoughts that aren't hers, seeing things that vanish when she blinks. She finds a final note in one of the books, scrawled in her grandmother's handwriting. "If the vessel resists, it must be severed. Flesh, bone, blood. Only then will the bond be broken." Emily stares at her hand. The ring glows red, and something inside her whispers, "You are mine now." Part 2. The Curse Unveiled. Emily hadn't slept in 2 days. Her eyes were bloodshot, her thoughts frayed like the edges of an old photograph. The ring on her finger burned colder with each passing hour. Her skin around it was gray now, bruised and tight like dead bark. Sometimes she thought she saw the veins around it moving, wiggling like worms under her skin. Her mother still wouldn't speak. After the possession in the living room, Emily had tried to reach her, tried to shake her out of it. But the woman who had raised her just sat there, staring blankly, murmuring words Emily couldn't understand. Ancient, jagged syllables that cracked like ice. It was clear now. The ring wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. And it had begun to feed on her family. Emily returned to the attic the next morning, flashlight in hand. The pages of the book, The Vessel and the Veil, were almost brittle in the damp air, but she flipped carefully until she found a section she'd missed before. Scrawled in the margins was a short note, likely written by her grandmother. The ring was forged not to protect, but to contain. The spirit within cannot be banished, only held, but every vessel cracks eventually. Beneath it, a name was etched in smudged ink. Bastarael. Emily mouthed the name. The shadows in the attic stirred. She flipped the page again. This one wasn't printed, but handwritten entirely in Grandma Margaret's curling script. Bastarael was bound to the ring through sacrifice. A spirit of sorrow, an ancient entity who feeds on lineage, guilt, and blood. Once awakened, it will haunt the line of its jailer, seeking flesh to dwell in. Only a willing severance can end the curse. Emily whispered aloud, "A willing severance?" Her thoughts drifted back to the final line in the book. Flesh, bone, blood. She shivered. Emily turned to the one person outside the family who might know the truth, Father Malcolm, the old priest who had performed Grandma Margaret's funeral rites. He was a quiet, austere man with a face like cracked marble and eyes that never blinked long. She called him from a payphone near the park. Her cell phone hadn't worked properly in days. Calls dropped, messages distorted, screen flickering with static, and sometimes showing strange, impossible photos of the garden at night, filled with silhouettes. When she mentioned the ring and her grandmother's name, Father Malcolm's voice changed. "I'll meet you," he said, "but not at the house." They met at the old chapel at the edge of town. Candles flickered in iron sconces. The air smelled of wax and mold. Emily showed him her hand. The priest didn't flinch. "Margaret said this day might come," he said softly. "She told me once that she'd caged something terrible, something older than our church. I didn't believe her, but then I saw what she did to keep it locked away. The ring was never meant to be inherited." "She left it to me," Emily said, trembling. "She said only I could wear it." Malcolm nodded gravely. "Because only blood can carry the prison." He reached for a crucifix hanging from his neck and whispered a blessing. The ring sizzled, and Emily yanked her hand back with a cry. "It's already inside you," the priest said. "You've bonded. The entity is no longer just bound to the ring, it's using it as a door." A door to what? To your soul. He brought her into the chapel's back room, where ancient texts were stored in locked cabinets. One book, bound in cracked red leather, opened with a groan. Inside she saw illustrations of rings, not just one but many. Each had unique patterns, but all seemed to share the same red stone. In one drawing, a ring was being buried in the mouth of a corpse. In another, it was being slipped onto the hand of a screaming child. These rings were known as seals of woe, Father Malcolm explained, each used to bind a different spirit. Bastarael was one of the most dangerous. It doesn't just haunt, it infects. It spreads grief, feeds on sorrow, and eventually takes over completely. Emily shook her head. "So how do I stop it?" He hesitated. "There's only one way to break a binding like this. You have to give it something stronger than what it already has. A greater grief, a deeper wound." Emily stared. "What does that mean?" "You have to sacrifice something, or someone, something the spirit wants more." She returned home that evening with a horrible weight pressing down on her. Her mother was gone. Not dead, just gone. Her room was empty, her things untouched. No signs of struggle, only the faint scent of lavender and cold ashes. In the kitchen, a single sheet of paper lay on the table. It was blank, but when Emily touched it, the words formed in blood-red strokes. "The line must end." She dropped it. That night, the dreams returned, but this time they weren't dreams. Emily found herself walking through the garden in moonlight, barefoot in her nightgown. The roses had bloomed again, black and rust-colored, thorns glistening. In the center stood her grandmother, or what was left of her. Margaret's face was peeled and cracked like old wax, her jaw unhinged slightly as if in constant mourning. Her eyes glowed with crimson light. "You should not have worn it," the figure rasped. "I kept it quiet for decades. I fed it my own sorrow, but it wanted more. It always wants more." Emily cried, "Then help me stop it." The grandmother's mouth curled into a grotesque smile. "You can't stop it, but you can. Finish it." Emily woke with dirt under her fingernails. She had been digging. In her sleep. She found a shovel outside and followed her muddy footprints to the back of the garden, where a shallow hole had already begun to form. Something called to her, low and vibrating beneath the earth. She dug, and she found the box. It was identical to the one the ring had come in, but much older. Cracked velvet, rusted hinges. Inside, a second ring. This one had no stone, just a jagged dent where a gem had once been. Along the inner band was carved one word, Alara. Emily didn't know the name, but her chest tightened when she said it aloud, and the ring on her finger pulsed violently. Back in the attic, she searched for the name in the journals. She found it near the end of one of the notebooks in a faded entry. Alara was my sister. She wore the ring before me. She didn't survive the binding. It took her completely. We never found her body, only ashes and teeth. I swore I'd contain it forever, but I'm tired, and Emily is strong. She can endure. Emily dropped the book. She gave it to me, she whispered, so she wouldn't have to die with it. The rage hit her like a storm. She hadn't inherited a gift. She had inherited a burden, a prison, a death sentence. That night, the spirit attacked. It came through the mirror, shattering the glass in a burst of freezing wind. A shriek filled the room, high and endless, and the figure of Margaret floated into the air, twisted and bloodless, her eyes glowing like embers. Emily fell to her knees as the pressure crushed her lungs. "Give in," the voice whispered. "Let me in." She screamed and clawed at the ring, but it wouldn't budge. Behind her, the second ring, Alara, slid across the floor. Without thinking, she grabbed it and held it high. The ghost reeled back, howling. The old ring began to shake. Suddenly, a voice, not her grandmother's, but soft and young, filled the room. "It doesn't want me. It wants what it was promised." The mirror reassembled itself in reverse, shards lifting from the floor. Emily turned. Inside the glass stood a girl her age, pale, familiar, her great-aunt Alara. "I didn't resist," the ghost said. "I let it in. You can fight it, Emily, but you'll have to be willing to bleed." The ring burned red hot. Emily nodded. She ran to the bathroom, grabbed a razor, and without hesitation sliced deep into her palm. The blood hit the ring, and it screamed. The spirit convulsed in the air, torn between the two rings. Emily forced her palm against the old ring, pressing blood into its dented stone socket. "Alara," she whispered, "take it back." A wind blasted through the house, and the lights burst in unison. The spirit lunged toward Emily, but just before it touched her, the second ring pulsed, and the spirit was sucked backward into the ring. The box slammed shut on its own. Everything went silent. Emily collapsed, bleeding and shaking. The original ring still clung to her finger, but it was black now. Dead. Cold, but no longer throbbing. The presence inside was gone. The second ring sat in the box, still humming with trapped energy. She wrapped it in cloth, placed it inside a sealed jar, and buried it deeper than before. She didn't tell anyone what had happened. Her mother never returned. But sometimes, late at night, Emily hears soft footsteps in the hallway, and the air smells faintly of lavender and ashes. Part 3. The Final Severance. The nightmares never fully stopped. Even after sealing the second ring, even after the screaming had ceased and the mirrors stopped warping, Emily still woke up some nights gasping, drenched in sweat. The house remained eerily quiet, too quiet, and her mother was still gone. It had been 3 weeks. Emily stopped asking the neighbors if they had seen her. They all avoided her now, whispering when she passed, crossing the street when she came near. She had become the girl from the haunted house, the one whose mother vanished after the funeral. But Emily didn't care. She had bigger problems, because the ring on her finger, the original one, was changing again. At first, she thought it was her imagination. A flicker of light when it caught the sun, a dull pulse against her skin, like a faint heartbeat. But then it started tightening again, slowly, like the first time. And worse, her blood was being drawn. Every morning, she woke to find small crimson stains on her sheets, tiny puncture marks around the band. The silver had turned darker, more jagged, as though absorbing something from her. She tried everything: salt baths, fire, cold, even smashing it with a hammer. Nothing worked. The spirit may have been sealed, but the binding still held. The ring had become a part of her. Desperate, Emily returned to Father Malcolm's chapel. It was locked. She knocked for 10 minutes before forcing the door open. Inside, candles had melted down to nubs. Books were strewn across the floor. The altar had been torn apart. And in the back room, she found Father Malcolm, hanging from the rafters by his rosary beads. His face was twisted in horror. A note was pinned to his chest. "I failed the vessel." Emily staggered back, breath caught in her throat. Whatever she'd done in sealing Bastarael, It hadn't been enough. Something was still coming. Emily searched the chapel, heart pounding. Behind a false panel in the floor beneath the altar, she found a hidden journal. Unlike the others, this one wasn't ancient. It was recent. Father Malcolm's own handwriting, dated just days before. The girl has done the impossible, separated spirit from vessel. But the vessel remains cursed. It was not just a prison, it was a contract. The bloodline carries the clause. If the curse is not severed completely, it will consume her, body and soul. There is only one way to end it now, the severance rite. The final page was a ritual. Written in Latin with blood-like ink, it required a sacred site, a blood offering, and a final witness from the bloodline. Emily read the last line and froze. If no witness remains, the vessel must sacrifice her reflection. That night, Emily prepared. She packed candles, chalk, a silver dagger from her grandmother's altar, and rings, hers and Alara's. She chose the old ruins in the woods outside town for the rite, the same place her grandmother used for spirit work decades ago, a place where the veil between worlds had once thinned. It was past midnight when she reached it. The ruins were just stone arches and moss-covered stones now, but the energy was still there, buzzing beneath her feet. Emily drew the ritual circle carefully, using salt, ash, and powdered rose petals. In the center, she placed both rings. Then she cut her palm, letting her blood drip onto the stones. The wind howled through the trees, and the mirrors appeared. Not actual mirrors, but shimmering panels of light that formed around her like tall, liquid glass. In each, she saw herself, but different. In one, she was laughing. In another, crying. In a third, she was dead-eyed and pale, the ring glowing bright red on her hand. And in one, she wasn't alone. Her mother stood behind her in that reflection, whispering something Emily couldn't hear. Suddenly, the mirror shattered. From the shards, a voice emerged. You are the vessel, the cage, the key, the lock. You cannot live whole. The temperature dropped. The candles flared violently, their flames turning blue. The blood on the stones hissed and formed symbols on its own. The ritual had begun. The air grew thick, like syrup. Emily knelt within the circle and began to read the Latin phrases aloud from Father Malcolm's journal. Her voice shook at first, but gained strength as the ground trembled beneath her. The rings rattled, the shadows stirred, and then from the center of the circle rose a figure made entirely of smoke and bone. It wore her grandmother's face, but not her grandmother's eyes. They were hollow, devouring. You severed my host, the creature hissed. You sealed my escape. I will burn you from the inside. Emily held up the dagger. Then try. The figure lunged, but was stopped at the edge of the salt circle. It shrieked and every mirror shattered again. This time shards flew inward, embedding themselves into Emily's arms, legs, shoulders. She screamed in pain, but she did not stop. She kept chanting. The spirit's form flickered. The false grandmother twisted, grew taller, then shorter, then became a swarm of writhing moths, then reassembled into a being of smoke with burning red eyes. I offered your grandmother peace. It hissed. I gave her decades. She gave me lineage. You broke the deal. I'm ending it, Emily said. She took the dagger, and she aimed for the ring. This time she didn't try to remove it. She stabbed through it, into her finger. Blood sprayed across the ritual circle. The ring cracked, just slightly, but it was enough. The ground split open beneath her. The spirit screamed as a chasm of white fire yawned below. And then she saw her, Alara, standing just beyond the veil, reaching out. You've almost done it, Alara said, but you must make the final cut. What do you mean? Sever the line. Emily looked down. Her blood had connected both rings. The circle was collapsing. If she didn't end it now, the spirit would break free. Tears streaming, she made her choice. She placed the dagger on her own hand, on the finger wearing the ring, and sliced it off. Pain exploded through her. The ring fell, clattering onto the stone, and shattered completely. The spirit wailed. Its form burst into flames, consumed by the severed bond. Every mirror in the circle melted. The wind vanished. The candles went out. Silence. Then, peace. For the first time in weeks, maybe her whole life, Emily felt free. She buried the shattered rings in the ruins beneath stone and salt, wrapped her bleeding hand, walked home in the dark. Her house was warm when she returned. The lights worked again. And sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea as if nothing had happened, was her mother, alive, whole, smiling faintly. I was trapped in the in-between, her mother said, tears in her eyes. When you broke the contract, I came back. They embraced, weeping. Emily whispered, "It's over." And for a while it was. She healed. Her finger never grew back, but the pain lessened. The shadows faded. The dream stopped. She even began to laugh again. But one day, while walking through the park, she saw a little girl sitting under a tree. The girl was humming a strange melody, holding something in her small hand, a piece of black and silver, twisted, familiar. Their eyes met. The girl smiled and vanished. The end.